Hello and welcome to episode 163 of Pros. This week, see the downside of those superhero accidents and meet a prostitute from Shanghai who becomes a queen. Rather than do my usual pleas, let me just apologize for missing this due date for episode 163. I fear I had some rather challenging things going on in my personal family life, and I do hope you'll forgive me that little flub. You've got some good revisitations of stories in store, and we'll actually be back before the 2 weeks are over for episode 164. Now let's get to the tales, shall we? This week we have The Afflicted and The Queen of California. Enjoy. The Afflicted, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. Poison is in everything, and no thing is without poison. The dosage makes it either a poison or a remedy. Paracelsus. I once read somewhere that people still can't handle Marie Curie's notebooks in France's Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris, and won't be for some time to come. Supposedly, the half-life of the radium-226 is something around 1,600 years. 100 years down, and 1,500 more to go. Deadly, deadly notebooks. Part of that, like most compelling stories, is probably fiction, sprinkled into an equally compelling but slightly less shiny truth. The stories of Curie's notebooks, hyperbolized or not, are a reminder to me that I can't be around people. Exposing them to me is a death sentence. A slow, creeping death sentence, but a death sentence nonetheless. The recent spat of accidents haven't really gotten any bad press, but I am a living, breathing example of how the literal and figurative fallout from the event with the reactor caused very different reactions in and from people. The news, as always, was deeply saddened by the initial loss of life in the wake of the meltdown. The explosion. The whatever. The degree of sadness in the morning only lasted the obligatory news cycle, and once they realized the event was creating mutations in a handful of citizens, causing them to blossom into comic book-like beings come to life off the page, those lost in the accident were quickly relegated to the annals of forgotten legions to the ever-shortening attention span of humanity. Bright, stretchy costumes aren't prevailing as the norm for the affected, as they're being called. No. The woman with the enhanced strength wears a sundress with sunflowers and baby's breath pattern. The man with bones that immediately reknit, making him quite formidable, wears skinny jeans and waxes his hipster mustache. The teenage girl whose eyes were burned out by the initial flash, but who gained telepathy that also allows for something akin to echolocation, dresses in baggy all-black attire and jangles with her excessive bracelets, sliding around on her arms when she walks. Stephanie Myron, Joseph Bendenair, Lily Flint. No jazzed up names, just three normal people turned into something different by circumstances beyond their control. The Affected. What the news isn't reporting is the rest of us. We who have dubbed ourselves the Afflicted. Not everyone hit in the meltdown gets to fly or hyper heal. We Afflicted are doing our best to stay anonymous while communicating and forming a bit of a support system for ourselves. Reddit, Discord, and a variety of more clandestine online forums are how we are doing that. But we are pretty careful, as some of the people who have participated in the Afflicted chat rooms have abruptly disappeared. We think the government would rather glitz up the accident with the affected and forget about us altogether. We are liability incarnate. So, it's easier to make us disappear. Some Afflicted have it worse off than me. This one girl named Evelyn had open sores all over her body, and her skin would peel back and chuff off with the slightest breeze. It never really healed, but it never outright killed her either. Eternal and ongoing damnation for her entire life. Well, not a very long-lived life anyway. In the end, the affliction didn't kill Evelyn. No. A bottle full of pills did that. Cannibalistic urges. Horrendous unending feedback in place of hearing. Calcification of internal organs. Uncontrollable phasing through solid objects. The list of afflictions goes on and on and on and on and on. Mine is slower, not easily seen. In that way, many of my fellow Afflicted on the chat room say mine is actually more insidious. I am irradiated, but it's more than that. I give off swelling levels of radiation. It doesn't seem to hurt me, but it killed my dog Jake. He was a healthy 5-year-old black lab. Jake lost his hair and developed boils and died within weeks of my coming home in the wake of the incident. My girlfriend at the time was casual, but she'd spend extended stints with me, and those would always have her leaving sick, feverish, gums bleeding and beginning to slough off. She would go home and recover for a couple weeks only to come back and get sick again. Sicker and sicker with each successive visit. She was diagnosed with radiation poisoning and left for her family's farm in Missouri to recover. She broke up with me before she left. She didn't know for sure that I was hurting her, but she knew. So I find myself now fully withdrawn from society a year after the meltdown. More and more of the affected have come forward, most of them quickly being employed by the government or the super rich, becoming something akin to the Hollywood superstar. Less and less of the afflicted are showing up to the discussion boards and Twitch channels and chat rooms. But that is to be expected, right? We are dying, after all. I'm assuming that goes for me too, albeit my execution is more deliberate, clearly slower. Then again, I've begun to wonder of late if my irradiation might only harm others, if I am somehow immune to radioactivity now. Would that make me shift from afflicted to affected? Part of me sings at that possibility. The more realistic part of me knows that even if I am not dying from my ailment, I have been doomed. Never again can I be with another living being. Even my houseplants wither around me. That whole irradiated corn growing the size of a tractor thing, it's bullshit. I purchased a Geiger counter early on just to make sure this isn't all in my head. The readings not only confirm my irradiation, but find that my radioactivity levels have been dramatically increasing from month to month. I am becoming more deadly. I would like to think that, like Curie's notebooks, I might still be useful, or at least novel, or worth keeping, despite my being the executioner's blade to anyone who would have me, anyone who would engage me in any meaningful way. So, I will continue in my life of solitude, locked away and working solely from home, hearing the sounds of the city through my now lead panel-lined walls. I am poison. I am lonely. I pray that I can continue in this purgatory without my sanity cracking, without deciding that just one beer, just one hug, just one day in the park, just one fuck is worth the life of another. The more I consider this, and the more I feel my mind begin to start to chip under the burden, the more I understand all those villains in comic books. But I can't allow myself to become a monster. No. I already am a monster. I can't allow myself to become monstrous. I am poison. I have to repeat it. It has to become my mantra. I am poison. 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 Thank you for listening to The Afflicted, an original short story by me, Jared I. McGee. Please stick around for our next short story, a wonderful tale of slightly altered true fact history, taking a look at the rise of an immigrant who became a prostitute, who became a queen. Please stick around for The Queen of California. The Queen of California, an original short story by Jared I. McGee.
You don't pay a prostitute for sex. You pay her to leave afterwards. Dashiell Hammett.
The Barbary Coast was not what Zhang Nuo was aiming for when she left Shanghai for San Francisco. She had heard of tales of opportunity, and streets literally lined with gold that the brave miners could actually pick straight out of the California streams without ever having to actually mine at all. The city. Her new city was anything but golden, though. The locals were far from welcoming to a young woman who didn't understand a word of English to begin. Many women coming over to America to start new lives alone found themselves homeless and cast out, eventually dying from exposure or hunger or any other number of things to be expected when one sleeps outside in the wilderness. Nuwa avoided complete banishment. Unlike many of the women she saw crawling about the margins of the city, she was pretty. Very pretty. She was slight. She had clear skin, bright laughing brown eyes, and a straight white smile. The city wasn't going to abandon her to the life of exile so many other immigrants found upon arrival. But it wasn't going to do her any favors either. Her fate was less exile than servile prison sentence. At least at first. Nuwa often thought of the stories she'd grown up on about the emperor's concubines, roiling harems of young pretty women whose sole purpose was to live in luxury, baubles to adorn the court, and to spread their legs whenever the emperor had a mind to rut. That, at least, sounded like a form of civic duty and provided these women with stature, relative safety, and a modicum of comfort. The Barbary Coast, as the slapshot neighborhood of immigrants and whores was known, was all shanties made of scrapped wood, leather, and metal that the residents foraged from anywhere they could. Nuwa's glorified lean-to of trash was right at the corner of Kearney Street, making her new trade that came with her new life much easier to ply, though far from the halls of an emperor. All the miners and sailors found her makeshift home rather easily there on the corner. And though she was no emperor's concubine, Nuwa quickly fucked and sucked her way to prominence in the Barbary, and then on to moderate fame in the city at large. Zhang Nuwa had no desire to become a prostitute. She certainly had not had that life in mind when she boarded the ship that brought her to California. But once stuck in an infinitely sticky situation, Nuwa decided that if she was going to be forced into prostitution, she would be the absolute best whore she could be. In the beginning, she was quite intimidated by all the Mexican and white women of the Washingtons. Washington Hall and Washington Street, respectively. They charged more, tried to package themselves as a high-class service for gentlemen, and were, therefore, generally in far higher demand. At first. But not for long. Within a year, Nuwa had made enough money and garnered enough fame to bid farewell to the Barbary and move into her own home on Pike Street, closer to what passed for civilization there in the West. Within another year, she had a growing empire of women who took orders from her. From being a hungry beggar for men's pennies to being an empress of whores. With her growing success, she began to feel that she was doing her people proud. There on Pike, she hired and housed only Chinese women whom she tried to treat fairly. The newer girls and the uglier girls did have to work as Long Wai. But that was unavoidable. And being a woman always holding her legs up was far better when you were looked out for by a fierce, loyal madam and lived in something cleaner and safer than anything the Barbary or the slums of China had to offer. So Nuwa was bettering her people in the immediate present and was acting like a brand ambassador for all Chinese people, showing the men of San Francisco that Chinese women were beautiful, smart, unbowed, enterprising, desirable, and not to be downplayed. They were human. They were powerful. They were human. With success came enemies. The Washington's women all loathed Zhang Nuwa from the beginning, but the men of San Francisco and the surrounding areas began to be envious of her successes too. Time and time again, people sought to deride her and her girls. No, their vaginas didn't go from east to west versus north to south, as was so often rumored. And take what was hers. Yes, she could tell the difference between gold and brass, diamond and glass. Nuwa successfully fended off these attacks for the better part of a decade, putting her cyclonic energies to good use. But as more of her countrymen and women streamed into California in the wake of tragedy after tragedy back home in China, she began to see the tides of public opinion turn on her, and her hard-won fame and visibility quickly became a liability to her and her charges. Equally problematic, the lawless West was beginning to be subdued by the legalities of the U.S. Temperance and lawmen began to chip away at her business. Like the survivor and entrepreneur she was, though, Nuwa began a relationship with the marshal put in charge of all of San Francisco, ensuring that Joseph Calhoun wouldn't shut her down or harm the women under her protection. That relationship kept the dam from breaking for a time. But Calhoun was violent, and that violence spilled into the bedroom where Nuwa, a woman who had encountered every type of proclivity and perversion of men and women, was surprised to find something new for the first time since her childhood dalliances and explorations. Extraordinary barbarity, brutality, and sadism. Calhoun's sadistic tendencies were being echoed throughout the fully incorporated California. After 15 years of being untouchable, first because of her being less than human and then because of her unmatched fame and power, the whites of the city began to pass laws that didn't just curtail prostitution, though they did that. That didn't just curtail Chinese prostitution, though they also did that. But that were openly, unapologetically aimed at suppressing and oppressing Nuwan and her countrymen and women. When she saw her girls begin to suffer, she knew her time in the city was done. Zhang Nuwan sold her place on Pike to some bored, wealthy white women who found the idea of owning what used to be a parlor sin exciting and novel. They apparently thought some of the spice and sexiness of the body place might eke into their own drab lives. Nuwa gave her girls a bit of the sum, a pittance really, but at least enough to keep them on their feet and able to find their next jobs and homes for a month. And she promptly abandoned her adopted home city. For the second and final time, Nuwa ran from persecution and violence, a refugee of the hatred and rules of men yet again. She set her sights on the still unruly south of California, near the border with Mexico. She knew from experience that if she tanned her skin, she could often pass as mixed race, which allowed her to sidestep some of the new racist laws taking hold in the state. She also had one eye turned toward marriage. She was the prettiest woman in all of California, after all. Every man from the lowliest sailor to the new first U.S. Senator from California had told her that, and had spoken quite publicly of her unmatched beauty. She could always fall back on prostitution. There, she was a master. But with the money she already had, her extreme intelligence, and her keen business acumen, Nuwa was relatively confident that she would be able to reinvent herself fully. She couldn't help but be pleased at the surprise she'd give the lucky man she chose to allow to marry her. Gold in the bedroom, gold in the pocketbook, gold in the talking parlor. All that poison that was given her over the years, she'd taken it and turned it into a burning fire that made her famous and successful beyond her wildest dreams. Now she had ambrosia running through those veins, pumping through her heart. She was a queen, a goddess, and she knew it.
She nourishes the poison in her veins and is consumed by a secret fire. Virgil.
Thank you for listening to The Queen of California, an original short story by me, Jared I. McGee. All sounds that you've heard come from YouTube's free audio library, freesound.org, or are of my own make. Those sounds that aren't mine are being used under CC 1.0 Universal Public Domain Dedication licenses. That does it this week for Prose. I certainly hope you've enjoyed our tales, and as you're out there milling about this wide world, do your best to love those around you, tell them that you do, and embrace this life as it is always, stranger than fiction. Thanks for listening.